Hi, it's Andrew Eborn here with another edition of the Andrew Eborn Show, and I'm delighted that my very special guest is Chris Wong. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm very well, thank you, Andrew. How are you?
I am amazing. And are you down in Folkestone?
I'm very near to Folkestone, yes.
Fantastic. And how have you been coping during these extraordinary times? I know we're easing off now, and people are going to be unleashed effectively. But for the last several weeks, since March the 23rd, it's been a bit of a nightmare, hasn't it?
It really has. In fact, I went into a bit of a lockdown about 10 days early, sort of reading the writing on the wall and making sure that I was safe, along with a friend of mine who wanted to be safer sooner. I did that so that we both knew that each other's households were safe, and therefore I could help out with things like homeschooling and stuff like that.
Which is incredible, because I've been following you on social media, on all that sort of stuff. And what I love is you're so used to being on the road, doing all these concerts around the world, and spoken to lots of people about that. And suddenly to reinvent yourself as somebody being locked down and a home teacher as well. What subjects do you teach?
So it's mostly maths and English, a little bit of science, a little bit of history. So I'm helping out with a 7-year-old, basically, mostly. And so, yeah, it's very one-to-one, still socially distant, but needs must. You help friends when your friends need help, don't you?
Absolutely. And they say that music and maths go very well together. Were you quite a mathematician at school?
Yeah, I got as far as A-level maths, yeah. So, yeah, I do like maths. I like that you can make most things in maths a game. You know?
And that's the great way of teaching it, is if you can make anything fun. I think that's the brilliant thing about teachers, and the teachers that really inspire are those who can bring that fun element.
Yeah, well, of course, years ago I used to teach guitar. I stopped teaching in the 90s, actually, but I taught from the age of 16 onwards, right through sixth form, right through uni. And of course, you know, doing classroom subjects with someone is very different, and I have nothing but admiration for professional teachers who are underpaid, much like healthcare workers who are definitely underpaid, I would say. You know, joining in with clapping the NHS is all very well, but you know what they really need is a decent salary. But teaching, yeah, again, I think it's the same thing. You know, it's not a job; it's a vocation, and some people are just great at it, and some of us just battle along and kind of have to solve our own problems of, well, they're not understanding this. How can I say it differently? How can I put it across differently? How can I keep them interested, and so on? So I have nothing but admiration for professional teachers.
I think you're right, and that's the one thing that's come about the positive stuff, if you like. It's a new appreciation of what I call the everyday heroes. It is, as you say, the key workers, the teachers, the people who are out in the community, keeping us all going. And what I loved was that Banksy new artwork, where you have a child sat down and it has a big basket full of superheroes with Batman and Spider-Woman and all these different ones. But the one person he's now playing with, which is a sign of our times, is the NHS worker, which he does.
Yeah.
So these are our new superheroes, and we've got a new appreciation for them, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. I mean, kind of, you know, as you go through life, you know, experiences with friends and family and their experiences with the NHS. You know, you hear stories, mostly good, mostly like, oh, well, we're told that they can't cope with this, and then you hear from a friend that their relative has been in with such and such an illness or whatever, you know, over the last few years, and you start to hear stories of how great they are, how great the service is, how overworked they are, but person to person, how most of them are just fantastic. But in the lockdown, yeah, of course, we've all become highly aware of the work that these people do, and it's good that they are appreciated by the majority now.
Yeah.
the vast majority. And so
And, and you're right, Chris, as well, because what we need to do is not just go out and clap on a Thursday, and the last clap, they say, will be on July the 4th, but to recognise, make sure they get a fair wage, make sure they are recognised and treated with respect and the dignity which everybody deserves, but actually we need to shine a light on certain professions which
we
we
do.
have taken for granted.
Yeah, we do. We really do. They, you know, they don't have a fair salary. I don't believe for the work and the risk and the dedication and the service to people that they give, as well as their clinical expertise. And clinical expertise takes a while to learn. You know, their training is, you know, you don't just leave school and think, oh, I'll be a nurse. You've got to go and train to do that. And you've got to have the right kind of a vocational attitude to do that as well. But like many professions, you know, you don't just simply leave school and become that. There's years of training. I mean, in music, obviously, there's years of training, which starts, in my case, when you're, you know, 9 or 10, and you train and you put in the hours of work all through school, all through uni.
But
And
talk us
beyond.
through that. You were talking about that sort of side, and it is, as a musician, it is feast and famine. If you're not on the road, you're not working, you don't get paid. So it's quite tricky. But talk about that training. You said you started when you were 9. Tell us which instruments you were learning when you were 9, and at school you were in Cambridge, weren't you?
I was born and raised in Cambridge. First instrument was recorder, like many people. I always liked music, so when anything was happening musically, I would, you know, be interested in it, no matter what kind of music. So I remember one time at primary school, there was an older kid who gave a mini recital on the piano, and actually played some boogie woogie. And that guy actually went on to become a ballet dancer.
Oh, brilliant!
And yeah, he's from a talented family. He's 2 brothers, Andy, and then himself, Ben, and then the younger brother, Sam. Sam's a professional bass player. Andy was a guitarist. And so things like that, they'd be, you know, oh, we're all going to the hall. We're going to listen to Ben play the piano, and we go, and I'll be like, oh, this is amazing, you know. So I was always interested. So yeah, so then, you know, like lots of people started on recorder. I'm sure it was horrendous to listen to, you know. Then I wanted to learn the violin at my school. There wasn't a huge music department. I'll never forget my music teacher, Mrs. Cox. And the opportunity came up to play a stringed instrument. And basically the choice at my school was cello or violin or recorder. Already doing recorder. I wanted to do violin. There wasn't a school instrument available, so I had to do cello for a while. I had to share a cello with my best friend.
Right.
Did that for a few months, and then a violin became available, so I switched to violin. And I played violin for a few years, played in holiday orchestra and that sort of thing. And my violin teacher was Olive Walker, who was fantastic. And then when I went to secondary school, I had a change of teacher to Mr. Bass, David Bass, who ran the school strings for the whole of the Cambridge area at that time. And then I went to a private teacher because it was, you know, interfering with schoolwork, having lessons in school. But during the time I was playing violin, I was bought a guitar. I didn't ask for a guitar. Dad just turned up one Christmas with a guitar, and that was that.
Which guitar was it? Which was your first guitar?
My first guitar was an Arbiter. It was a SG copy, Gibson SG copy, made by Arbiter. And I learned to play a few chords, and I also learned to pick out tunes. So my mother brought me a Burt Weedon record. Now, many people learn with the Burt Weedon book.
Oh, they love Burt Weedon. Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, so many people had the book. I didn't have the book. I had 22 guitar golden grades, which I've still got, which my mother bought me one birthday. And I'd sit and pick out the tunes. And looking back, that was a big part of my training because I immediately started developing my ear. So put the record on, find the notes, play along with it. And, you know, that's a big part of what many of us do is listening to stuff and then being able to replicate it. So that started at an early age for me, just putting records on, trying to figure it out. I didn't have lessons, but it wasn't something that really took off for me. I could play a few tunes, but rhythm tunes, and a few chords. It didn't really take off until I was 14, and then some other local kids said, "Oh, let's start a band, and we'll have Chris in it. He's got a guitar, and I'll buy a bass, and I'll get some drums, So you form a band at age 14, and that's when I actually took an interest in the guitar and sort of learned. I bought a book about how to play lead guitar.
Oh, no, was there a special, and not a Burt Whedon one? That must
Not
be
about Whedon one. How to play lead guitar.
Oh, even better. And what's the name of the band? Everybody comes up with a name for their band.
Well, the original band, we were terrible. None of us could play, really. The first band, which we never did anything, was called The Piles.
The Piles, fantastic.
Yeah.
Are you still in touch with any of the other Piles?
I'm not, no.
They will be watching now, Chris. They're going to
possibly. Well, actually, I did see the drummer recently at his mother's funeral, which was a sad affair. Hadn't seen him for years. Then the lineup slightly changed, and we were the Potential Difference.
The Potential Difference. I love this. Who came up with the names?
I think it was the bass player who came up with that, because there was another local band in Cambridge called the Transistor. Some of those guys are still around, and we thought that was a really cool name. I was third year at school, and so on, and so doing physics, and I thought it was really cool.
What is
and
it?
then
what sort of music were you playing, Chris?
It was punky-ish. It was that kind of era, and we couldn't play.
Did you do your own music as well?
Yeah. It was. Yeah, we were trying to write songs and pieces of music, by jamming, as you do. It was great. Jamming's great. Proper jamming where you don't know anything. You don't know what you're going to play. Where you're trying to make stuff up. Jam sessions in pubs where people come up and sit in. Maybe with a house band or whoever's around. They're different kind of jams where, do you know this song? Yeah, I know that song. Okay, we'll play that then. Jamming when you literally can't play anything and you're making up as you go along, it's a lot of fun. Around that time as well, we had a change of music teacher at school. Our new music teacher came, Scott Gibson.
I'm impressed, Chris. I have to say, I'm really impressed that you remember all the names of your teachers. It's phenomenal.
They're very important people.
Yeah, I love it.
Your teachers have a huge impact on the rest of your life. So Scott came. He came at the beginning of my fourth year, so that O-level year. I don't know what that is in modern terms. Is that year 9?
Well, GCSE, I don't know. We lose track of it, and the American system is different to the English one because they add a couple of years, don't they? So it's a bit weird. But yes,
I get confused. So he came in at the beginning of my fourth year as I started my O-level music. My O-level music group. My secondary school was quite a relatively small school. There were 5 of us in the O-level music group.
5? That's not at all.
Yeah, nothing at all. And in the first term, so he came. He didn't know any of us, and there was a cellist. There was myself, and there were a couple of others who didn't really play instruments. Actually, not really. And then about halfway through the term, Scott said, "Oh, all bring your instruments to the next lesson. We'll see what's what." Okay, so we did that, and then he booked me to play in an out of school theatre, amateur dramatics theatre show from that, and then for the rest of fourth and fifth year, I was working with him out of school doing Andram shows with him. So.
What sort of shows did you do?
Okay, so he regularly did like 3 times a year, Adam Brooks Review Society review shows at the ADC Theatre in Cambridge with doctors and nurses. It was a real eye opener for a 14-year-old. You can imagine. They were a lot of fun. I didn't understand much of the humour. And then I also did stuff at the Arts Theatre, Cambridge, with some of the Amdram groups in Cambridge. And the Amdram groups in Cambridge are really, really good.
Oh, phenomenal. I mean, Cambridge has such a rich history. Even
Yeah.
footlights and things like that, and people coming there. I mean,
the quality, the quality was exceptional. So at the end of my 4th year, I was playing in a show called Canterbury Tales at the Arts Theatre. It was a 2-week run, and it was fantastic. And I got paid.
Really? Oh, your first professional gig?
Yeah. Well, almost my first professional gig. So that's like a proper job in a theatre. And suddenly, this was far more acceptable now that I played the electric guitar. Before that, I actually had a little trio with my best friend and another guy. Obviously, because there's 3 in a trio. And we were a dance trio.
The clue was in there, wasn't it, Chris? It's
kind of clues in the word. We were a dance trio. We used to play waltzes and foxtrots and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And you'd play for like 3 hours a night doing that kind of thing, led by the organist. And so I'd stand behind him and follow the chord sheets. And again, that was a real good education of just standing there, him opening the book and playing from the chord sheets. That became a very useful skill to have. But as professionals, you're expected to be able to do that. So that started early. So I did earn a bit of money in that dance trio.
Well, do you remember how much you earned? How much did you go out for?
We used to go out for 15 quid, £5 each.
15 quid. And was it a £5 each? Did you make it fair?
It was a £5 each, yeah. It was a £5 each. So doing the theatre work, when I think doing Canterbury Tales, I got 100 quid.
100 quid?
Yeah, and that was fantastic to a 15-year-old, as you can imagine. And that went on then to the following year. So after my O-levels, with my music teacher Scott, we went to the Edinburgh Festival with one of the doctors had written a show. We were a late night show at the Edinburgh Festival.
Oh, which venue did you play?
We played George Square.
Right.
And we shared that theatre with NYT, as it was then. I think it's now NYMT, National Youth Theatre, or National Youth Music Theatre.
Which is just up the road from me. It used to be based at the Shaw Theatre. I was offered a role there as well, and it does. They keep changing the letters and initials every day.
So of course, I was there, and I was the youngest person there. Apart from the fact that we'd swap over with NYT, and so I'd get to know a couple of the other, guys who'd just done their O-levels in NYT. Had a couple of weeks there, and the bass player from that I'd worked with in Cambridge doing shows, and the drummer was a friend of mine. In fact, who I jammed with.
Right.
And after that show, the 3 of us decided we needed to carry on. So then we formed what I'd call my first proper band, if you like. And so we were a band called Zoom.
Zoom! How appropriate, you see. It was all named after you, Chris. Little did you know you're going to be inspirational in this lockdown era.
I don't know about that. And that was my first proper band.
What sort of music did they play, Zoom?
We played sort of funky, jazz, funk rock, some rock, some pop, mostly originals. In fact, nearly all originals, really. And so we built up a bit of a following in Cambridge because we were all quite good for our age as instrumentalists. And so we had a bit of a following. The people in Cambridge will remember that band. And that ran for a couple of years until the bass player went off to study art at Bristol. He remained in Bristol, and he switched from bass guitar to double bass, and he's been a professional double bass player all that time. And the drummer went on. The drummer worked for me when I became musical director. He worked for me, as my drummer for a number of years, and he has worked with some big names and ended up being a theatre drummer as well. He toured with Mamma Mia for a number of years. He's done West End shows as well. His name is Chris Maitland, so he's quite a well-known drummer.
What's his name?
Chris Maitland.
Chris Maitland.
Yeah, I carried on working with Chris for a number of years, and into my professional life.
And how did you're talking about professional, I mean, your fiver, your 15 quid split 3 ways was professional.
Let's call that semi-pro at that age.
Oh, well, that's okay, it's good. But 100 quid, I mean, come on. That's, musicians nowadays be happy with that, you know. But you were a kid a few years ago, it's tremendous. But talk to me then about, you then moved on, you formed a lot of these bands, you had the original Zoom, which is what I love. How did you then take the next big step? And was it, because a lot of people say it's a lot to do with luck, isn't it? You're in the right place at the right time and people discover you.
Yeah, you do have to be in the right place at the right time. Well, what you have to have is the skills and the mindset in the first place. So you could be the right place at the right time, but if you're not dedicated enough, it doesn't matter who you meet. If you can't play or you don't fit in or your work attitude is wrong, then you're not going to last long. So after A-levels, I didn't do A-level music. I did sensible subjects. I applied to do a music course at the local tech, which is then called CCAT, Cambridge College of Art and Technology. I'm enrolled to do a degree there.
Ruskin, isn't it? Is that what it's called?
Now Anglia Ruskin. That's right. Yeah. Went through several name changes. It became a polytechnic and then a university. So I went there. I did a foundation A-level course in music for a year, and then did a music degree, an honours degree. By that time, I knew I wanted to be a musician full time. I was still teaching to earn some, spending money. And then whilst at college, I started being a musical director. So I then was the musical director for a couple of the Cambridgeshire Amdram societies and so on. You get about, you play with whoever you can play with. So I played in the Cambridge University big band, which at that time was called 78 RPM. I think it's now called QJ. To the jazz orchestra. We used to play at May Balls. And in Cambridge, there's several May Balls because there's several colleges. So we play, 5 or 6 May Balls a year or whatever.
That's good money as well. And I performed at the Balls. I think, and you're right, they do so many of them there.
Yeah, so we would play in 78 RPM. We would turn up at the first, say it was King, whatever night it was. Say it was King's College. We turn up at King's at 8 o'clock, and you do a set there, and maybe you'd hang around for 2 hours until you did another set, and then you pack it all up and go down the road to Trinity, set up there, and do 2 sets there, and then possibly go back to King's to play the breakfast set at 7 a.m. And that, of course, in Cambridge, May Balls happen in June.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
So they've done their exams. Of course, at the tech, we hadn't done ours. I was literally going from doing an exam in the morning, exam in the evening, going to May Balls, playing 4 sets at May Balls, getting home, getting changed out of a dinner suit, and going and doing 2 more exams and doing the same thing that night. So I couldn't do that now.
Right.
So there's things like that, and then as I say, the Amdram shows. I became the musical director for a couple of companies. I did Guys and Dolls, Kismet, West Side Story, Sound of Music.
Sweet Charity, you did?
Sweet Charity, I did. Yeah.
You can test me on your career. It sounds good.
And that was great. I hadn't had any training in conducting or anything, but my music teacher from secondary school, Scott, he went off to Hong Kong and he taught in a school in Hong Kong. I think he's just retiring now. We're still in touch. I was an usher at his wedding. We've stayed friends the whole time. He was back visiting, and someone mentioned that one of the companies was needing a change of MD, and he just said, "Well, you're doing it." I said, well, I can't do it. He said, yeah, you've seen me do it. You do it. And so I applied for that job, and I was the MD for a number of years for those. Then I started. Then professional life happened. So I had a couple of teaching jobs. One at a boarding school.
Or which boarding school did you think?
Oundle.
Oh, I know. Oh, famous boarding school.
Right. And also I was back at the Tech in Cambridge as the guitar teacher 2 years after I graduated, which is a bit weird because that meant that the third years were students when I was a student. So
yes, it is a bit. The sort of timing of that always sounds a bit weird, doesn't it?
Yeah, that was a bit odd. So I became the guitar teacher where I was a student. Did that for a number of years, and then eventually had enough playing to knock the teaching on the head bit by bit, and did a couple of touring shows. I did Crazy for You. I did Hot Shoe Shuffle. Josie.
As you say, as a musician, that's great, isn't it? Because you're there every night. You've got a guaranteed salary.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy that sort of work?
Some of the shows I enjoyed very much. So one of my most favourite jobs was Hot Shoe Shuffle, which was a small big band and a tap dancing show.
I love the idea it's a small big band. I like the oxymoron. I mean, that's how small was the small and how big was
I think it was 13. So there were 4 saxes rather than 5. There were 3 trumpets, only 1 trombone, percussion, drums, piano and guitar. I loved that job. I loved the music. We were on stage in white tuxes. It was really great. One of my most favourite jobs. Did some summer seasons. I toured with a singer called Mark Rattray, who I think was the last winner of Opportunity Knocks.
good old Huey Green, absolutely. The thrill of that.
Well, in those days, it was Les Dawson.
Yes, good old. He was brilliant, wasn't he? Because he he was really talented as a pianist, but he used to play around, and I think you can only play around once you're really good, and that's when you start playing the wrong notes and stuff. Did you meet Les? Did you work with him at all?
I never met Les, no. So I worked with Mark Rattray for a number of years with my friends in Cambridge. We did summer seasons and one-nighters in theatres all around the country, and from that is how I then. He'd done a couple of pantos for the producer I ended up working for. And
no, he didn't.
Oh, yes, he did.
Oh, thank you. We're here all week. It's very good.
We're here all week trying to fish. He knew that producer had a new venue, had got a new venue, and so therefore he must have needed another MD. So he told me to phone up and ask. So I just phoned and said, "You've got a new venue. You need another MD." That's me. He came to see us doing one of Mark's shows, and now I got booked as the MD for that, and I've been there ever since. So I've done at that theatre. I've done 25 pantomimes as musical director.
25 panto. Do you have a favourite panto?
I do. My favourite panto is Aladdin.
And what do you like about Aladdin? Who's been your best lead in Aladdin?
So many. Now the names don't stick around.
You remember your music teacher some years ago?
Yeah.
So many Aladdins.
I mean, at the Panto in Canterbury, at the Marlowe in Canterbury, obviously the company changed actually. So I originally started working for Kevin Wood Pantomimes, and then that company was passed on to his daughter and son-in-law, Paul and Emily Hendy, and the company name changed to Evolution. So I've actually worked for Evolution longer than I worked for Kevin Wood Pantomimes, and we've had great people there, including Toyah, which we'll come on to soon, I'm sure. But yeah, Robert Powell, people from EastEnders, people from Neighbours.
Chris, you've disappeared briefly, which probably means we might have lost the connection, in which case we'll take a quick break and we'll come straight back after these important messages.